The TeachPitch podcast. We are very excited to be launching a series of interviews for TeachPitch, a global community of 50,000 subscribers from over 205 countries to date. And for these interviews, we have selected a number of subscribers who have achieved great things. And by great, I mean amazing. Think of former presidents, entrepreneurs, people who've built hospitals, huge non-profit organizations, successful journalists, doctors, etc. And what all our guests have in common is that despite their great success, they've encountered many enormous challenges. So what were these challenges and how did they overcome them? That's what we're going to be talking about here. My name is Aldo de Pap and I'm massively looking forward and very grateful you can join us on this journey. So sit back, relax and download the podcast here. It's about the bigger picture here, right? Yeah. It's about true sustainability, really thinking about where we're going to be beyond our lifetime. And also, as you say on your website, genuinely appreciating what beauty is. Not just pushing out the next thing because it is the next thing. Because that's very often what you see. It's like, oh, here's the next thing. Is it better? No. Is it more beautiful? No. But it's the next thing.
Yeah. You see all these huge show productions right now, and they're getting crazier and crazier and more and like in different places. And, you know, and every time I feel it's to hide the lack of creativity in the clothes or the lack of love for the clothes. I understand, because if you make 6 or 10 collections a year, they cannot all be brilliant.
In this episode, I speak to my highly creative guest about his lifelong challenge of staying true to himself and his own beliefs. We speak about what it is like to go against the big commercial streams in fashion and introduce a brand new, genuinely sustainable concept in haute couture. Lastly, we talk about the fantasy powers of social media, creating a reality sometimes far away of life on Earth. Enjoy this interview with fashion designer Ronald van der Kemp.
We're so happy to be partnering with Hee Ha Ho, an interactive video platform that enables teachers and students to easily create amazing clickable videos for learning. Check out heehaho.com, that's HIHAHO.com, for more information and your free starter account. A big thank you to our friends at Sizus Maths Challenger, the only puzzle that effectively boosts your numeracy, critical thinking, and brain power. Go to sizuspuzzles.com, that is spelled CZEUS puzzles.com, to get your brain buzzing. We are so excited to be working with the team Learning Ladders, the only platform that provides assessment that goes way beyond tracking to effectively support teaching and learning for EYFS, primary and secondary settings. Go to learningladders.info to find out more. I hope you are ready for a wild ride into the ever-moving world of high fashion, gorgeous supermodels, extremely talented fashion designers, and flashy movie stars dressed up in the most exquisite creations, because my next guest is in the very midst of all of this. His own demi-couture fashion house is responsible for the most wonderful garments worn by royalty like Her Royal Highness Sheikha Moza bint Nasser, supermodels such as Kate Moss, Adriana Lima, and Carly Kloss, singers like Justin Bieber, Lady Gaga, Celine Dion, and Katy Perry, and actresses such as Priyanka Chopra Jonas, Emmy Watson, Lily Collins, and Dakota Johnson. And this list goes on and on. Ronald van der Kemp worked for over 25 years as a designer and creative director for high-end international luxury brands such as Bill Blass, Celine with Michael Kors, Guy Laroche, and Barneys New York before starting RVDK, a label under his own name, in August 2014. RVDK is on a mission to show the world that ethical fashion can be glamorous and exciting, and profoundly believes that a form of art can change behavior, which leads to a bigger change in the industry. The world is full of beautiful things, and we can't see it anymore, because we're too busy to consider them or too rookie to appreciate them, is an RVDK observation prominently featured on the label's website. The vision and mission of RVDK is not just a hollow slogan, as this designer ensures that 95% of the material used for his designs already exists. With that, RVDK is the very first sustainable couture brand in the world, and Ronald, the very first green pioneer haute couture designer on the globe. In an interview with the French Fédération de la Haute Couture et de la Mode, Ronald states that RVDK is trying to reinvent the notion of couture. We're not really a couture house, but more a movement that is trying to change things in the world, says Ronald. We want to work with companies and customers who want to be different, who have a point of view and a strength that wants to exude what they are about. We all need to think differently. This is what I'm looking for. So much to talk about with this world-famous sustainable designer who is on a mission to design clothes with a soul. Ronald, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
I was so happy you said yes to this interview because I see your name everywhere on social media, lots of buzz going on around your wonderful brand. And really amazing that we can get to talk to each other. Full disclosure before we start this interview, I am wearing Stella McCartney today. So I'm wearing this little jacket. I'm saying that, full disclosure, because it's the one, I believe, high fashion item that I possess. And I never get the occasion to mention that I'm wearing it. And I thought I need to dress for the occasion when I'm speaking to someone with your stature. If I would have had an RVDK item, of course I would have worn that, but hopefully soon.
Well, thanks for the effort.
And then another thing, Ronald, I read on your Wikipedia page, and this must be fake news, that you are 57 years old. And there must be something with my filter here, because I'm not looking at a 57-year-old man. You look mid-30s. At max.
Well, thank you. For me, it's not about age, that's for sure. You know, I feel like age has become less and less important in this world because young people want to look older and old people want to look younger. So it's all mixed up and sometimes you don't even know what you're looking at anymore. So I don't know. That seems to be such a focus on age. And I think right now, the focus should be somewhere else. That's more important things in life.
Most definitely. And this is just my own vanity is kind of when I look at people who've just been, successful and who've paved the ways in certain ways, then I kind of am always curious about their age for some reason. So that's my own,
I give it away by telling that I've worked in the industry for 25 years and I have my own brand now for 7 years. So if you can calculate a little bit, then you can figure out, that gives it away already.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I hope you don't take offense. It was just something that I was like, there's no way you were 50. And then, so we're speaking to each other at a very crucial time. COP26 is going on in Glasgow. The environment and the efforts we need to do to conserve the environment and to preserve nature, are at a high point. People are being asked to focus all around, to do the most of it. And you've basically already been saying that for 7 years, if not longer. What does it do to you when you see these conferences like COP26 going on? And what would be your message to such conferences and to such, world leaders coming together from a fashion angle?
Well, first of all, I'm really happy to see these conferences actually happening. The longer I work on this subject or that I'm sort of interested in the subject, the more important it seems to get and the more pressing it seems to get. So there really needs to be major change. And the problem is that we all have to do it together, but there's so many things involved. I mean, there's companies who want to make profits involved and there's us human beings and everybody has their own role in this. And I think we all need to really start to understand what is really happening around us. And I think these kind of conferences put the spotlight on it again, that there is a real urgency to change. And because I was hoping during the COVID lockdowns everywhere that people would really realize that we had to take a step back and that we needed to calm down and that we cannot grow because, it's simply impossible to keep growing. Nature itself grows, but it also, there's also moments where it's calm. But as humans, we want to keep growing. And I think these kind of conferences put a spotlight on the fact that it's impossible and that we need to change something, and hopefully, real impactful decisions will be made this time, that things are actually really changing. I mean, I always have hope, but I also have a little bit of despair in there.
It's a double-edged sword for me as well, because I see so many people come together. This is the, COP26, meaning there have already been 25 of these. So you're thinking, okay, what's more to discuss? But I think this one is also the first one after the pandemic. And I think during the pandemic, a lot of people became aware of the urgency in all of this. So hopefully,
I think a lot of people became aware of the urgency. But then when I look at the world that I'm living in, the fashion world, I think the moment things started to go down to normal, people are going back to their old ways immediately, and +1, or times 1,000, it feels like people were so hungry to do things again and to be hedonistic and to earn money and to do everything that was not possible during this period, that people were doing even things worse than they did before the pandemic. And this is what I'm seeing in the fashion world, this is what worries me more than anything else. There's been a lot of talk about sustainability and about the need for change. But then the reality now, if I saw the last couple of fashion weeks and the events and people still flying all over the world to look at a 10-minute fashion show, it's kind of ridiculous with everything that's going on in this world to do this. I understand the need for pleasure and beautiful things. I mean, I'm all for it, but it could be done in a little bit more of a responsible way. And this is what I'm really worried about, because you would think that things would have changed after the pandemic, but the contrary is the truth. So I really hope that people like decision makers that are now all together talking about climate will take real decisions, and also will force companies to be different and to think about what growth means. And, that instead of all the greed, we are a little more thinking about empathy, for the world and for the people around us. I think that makes everybody much happier than having more and more products and clothes around you. I think if you're, you do good, you feel much better than, if you buy everything that you want to do, I mean, I think this is the message in this world right now. We also saw the questions about the billionaires now in this world, that they have so much money and that just with a little bit of their fortune, they could make such major changes in this world. If you have that power, I think you should use it for something good.
Yeah. I think you're very right. And I think this is also what I deem to be very beautiful about the message you are spreading, because in my research, I saw you in one of the interviews saying it's like, you're not in there to make 100,000 dresses. You're in there to kind of make something of value, something of true beauty, to genuinely add value. So you're not necessarily advocating for more volume, but for more quality.
No, not at all. On the contrary, I think what we sort of lost in during this whole time of social media and the internet coming, I mean, everything needed to go fast. And I'm still educated in a way that you would save up for clothes, that things were made with love, that designers would work on a collection for a couple of months at least, and the garments were made by hand, not by high-tech factories. So it was all very human. And it was made for humans. Like, people sort of had an attachment to their clothes as well. They built wardrobes, which is a very different thing than now, like buying clothes for a moment and then it becomes sort of almost disposable. So the whole notion of what clothes are has become very, very different. And I just want to give people the love back for clothes. I mean, for me, the defining moment was when I was in New York and you see all these flagship stores and the most beautiful, windows and displays and everything. But all the clothes that I saw all day, they sort of didn't get to me. And what got to me were clothes that I found in a secondhand store that sold old couture pieces, because they sort of had a life. When you see them up close, you feel that somebody worn them even, but they're still timeless and they're still beautiful and they still last. And it's very different from what I saw in the stores. Even those clothes were maybe perfectly made, they sort of lacked that person in there or something, or that love or that human hand. And I think that's what I want to do with my clothes, that people think about it a different way. And not only that, with the clothes, I think more importantly, I want to give a message to even the people that cannot afford clothes that I make, because they are very expensive because of the way they're made. But I just also want to inspire young girls out there to think differently about dressing up and about how they build a wardrobe around themselves and about their personalities and about their eccentricities. And I think if you have a relationship to clothes that way, I think you're not going to buy fast fashion. You're not going to see clothes as a disposable project. I think you'll build it around your personality. And I think if we start thinking differently, then that would help an enormous thing already in the world today, because the fashion industry itself is like one of the most polluting industries in the world. So and there's a lot of work to do there. The brands have a responsibility there to teach people to think differently about the clothes, and not that you need to have something new every day. I mean,
It reminds me a bit of also this movement. I believe Ariana Huffington is very big in it, and Tiffany Haddish. They try to wear, the dress they like very much to multiple events, right? To multiple red carpet events, and they basically say, I feel happy in this dress, I look good in it, so I'm going to reuse it. There's no point in just wearing one dress per occasion, because that's just waste. What's the other occasion you're going to wear this dress, right?
Yeah. I think there has been a change in the past years, the past 2 years, 3 years. Well, because of all the Black Lives Matter, because of diversity and everything, that personality and who you are have become a lot more important, because I think once you know that, then you behave differently and you can start to build around your personality. Yeah, it's for an evening dress, but it's also for what you wear in daily life. If you have a wardrobe with many different pieces, you can combine them in different ways, and you can get inspired by maybe the big brands to wear things in a different way, because that's, I think, what we need to do. I mean, my example of that was that during COVID, we did a so-called fashion show in an empty hotel where we dressed all the girls in couture from the past 10 wardrobes that we had done. And we made masks to go with the dresses. And they all came out on the balconies wearing these dresses with a white flag. But the idea was that these are not new dresses. These were dresses that have been worn even by stars before or whatever. But we put them in a different context. This was also for me to show the fashion world to surrender to sustainability, hence the white flags. But it was also an idea to tell you, like, if you do a show, you don't always have to give them new clothes. You can also use clothes that you've shown before, put them in a different context, style them differently, inspire people to do that same thing at home. Because if you have a good trench coat, why making the same trench coat again, putting the old one on sale? This is what all the big brands are doing. By just changing the detail, the old trench coat becomes obsolete and they need to mark it down, and then in worst case, when they don't mark it down, they need to burn it or make it disappear. Yeah. I think if you have a good trench coat, you can keep it for life. You need to buy a new one every season. So, that idea needs to change. My idea was like during COVID, like, okay, this is a show with everything that was already there. Like the clothes were already there. They were made from fabrics that were already there. And it was a statement to show that you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time,
Yeah. And I think that's beautifully done and so well executed as well. I think it's a good wake-up call to people and also visualizes what you have in mind. Like the sustainable angle is basically, it's first, but it's also last, because you do not see it from the clothes. The clothes are glamorous. The clothes represent fashion.
Yeah, because when you think about sustainability, I mean, now it has changed, thank God. And I think part of the reason is the way we handled it is, but when we started it, sustainability was about sort of like grayish, like mud colors and hairy armpits, I say, and like, unflattering clothes, not sexy. But my passion is high fashion, glamour, sexy. I mean, I want to make women look beautiful and exciting, and this is what I do. But I thought I want people to think differently about sustainability. I want them to think of it in a positive way and think about it as a very playful thing. It could be very exciting and cool. And even the stars that wore my clothes that had no idea or couldn't care less that they were in such way, they still became ambassadors for what we stand for without them even saying it or speaking about it or, and this is the beauty of it. I think if we done it in a different way, if you keep talking about sustainability, then, people are sort of so sick of hearing what they need to do or what they can't do or can do. You need to take a vaccine. You need to do this. You need to stay at home. You need to, people don't want to hear it anymore. People just want to, have fun. So I want to reach those kind of people and show them glamour and show them beautiful things. And then maybe they think twice about, oh, okay, so this is done in this way. So, maybe I can change something myself as well. Or, this is the thing. I think you reach many more people than preaching to your own community. I mean, I think you need to reach the people that are not interested in the subject. So, for example, if I dress Gigi Hadid or Kendall Jenner, you don't think about sustainability in the first place. And the girls that follow her don't either. But if they're wearing my clothes, the girls might wake up and think like, hey. So I think you gain much more by doing it that way than by talking about it like we do now to a big audience. I just seduce them with glamour and with sexy clothes that they might want to wear themselves. So
I think it goes both ways. I 100% agree with you that if you demonstrate and seduce them with glamour, as you say, then it opens doors and opens people's eyes because it's a trigger for them to ask more questions on how this came together. But I think we're also in an age or in an era whereby people want to understand more and they want to talk more about it, right? It almost comes with the deal. I think as a fashion designer, let's say 5 years from now, if you're not sustainable, I think people will frown upon it in whichever way it is. And I think what is most important for you and for RVDK is that you put your money where your mouth is. I want that to be very clear that it's not just talk, right? It's for you, it's 95% of the material that you use already exists.
Right now you see a lot of companies talking about, their sustainability practices. I've never really talked about it. This is the way I work and it's in my DNA and this is what I believe in. I mean, when I graduated in 1990, I talked about my thesis. My final thesis was about nature, the environment, and fashion. Right now, there's so much talk about sustainability that you almost can't hear it anymore. I mean, the word itself has become almost damaged now. So it's also because it's been misused so often, and people feel they have to mention it in their ads and in their communication and in their shows. And, just by planting a few trees after a fashion show, you're not all of a sudden like, doing something for sustainability. There's a lot of things that are being said that are not being done. We have 5 minutes to fix something. And if not, then, goodbye, and I think people just don't realize it.
Yeah. And actionize it. It's not about words or feelings. It's about actions. And I think if you have the concrete example of, putting sustainability or whatever you want to call it, preservation, nature conservation, environmentally friendly, whatever words you choose. But if you put that into practice and if it basically shows on the bottom line, then I think you're doing something good. Not just use it as a buzzword, because I agree with you, it should not be misused. I'm going to go to your first challenge. You say as your, on your 25 years career path in fashion, you basically indicated as your first challenge that at times it was difficult for you to stay true to yourself and your own beliefs. Could you talk a little bit more about it?
It's been a constant fight between, who I am and what I was working for. I mean, in the beginning, first I worked in New York, I worked in Paris, I worked in Milan. I've seen many different type of companies and worked with different CEOs and very different situations. And every time you need to adapt. So your own beliefs, sometimes you really need to put them aside. But at one point, I think after 25 years seeing that and seeing more and more how it was going against my person, this is why I started what I do now. I thought, okay, if I want to do something in life, then I need to stop this and I need to step out of it and do something what I really believe in myself and hopefully set a positive example. And, I also wanted to be as creative as I wanted to be. And I wanted to do it in a good way. And I think because because I did it for so long, the need to do something for myself and to change something and to do something in an ethical way was so urgent that I really had to do it.
Do you remember the trigger that basically said, okay, I'm done, I'm now going to do my own thing?
Well, I was working for a big luxury company, and I think in the showroom, I think there was like 700 garments. And I was doing this like extra fine, like special line on top of it. And I was doing it and I thought, for what? Who's going to wear all this? And I thought, what is this sea of clothes? Like, I mean, I'd actually experienced it, but then at some moment you see it all at once, it becomes clear. And I thought like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not doing anything that matters anymore. It's just like, you need to do what you need to do to get to the numbers that need to be reached in this company. And the idea of growth already then, I just couldn't understand. And I thought, why do we always have to grow? Can we just make beautiful things and stay the way we are? Everybody has a job and like, why not? I mean, I know it's not a very business way of looking at things, but this is how I felt. So.
Yeah. And I can very much empathize with it. You basically felt like a little mechanic in a big corporate exercise that was just repeat. Yeah. Which difference did it make? And more importantly, which difference did you make? So I think that, it's very good to point that out. And then in terms of your creativity, did you have a kind of a free hand in the creative remit with these other brands?
If you're working for a certain brand, so you fit to the image, there is creative freedom within the boundaries of a brand, but that's normal, And for me, it was really important that I would challenge myself again. So this is why I didn't want to work with the idea of collection themes. I started working with the idea of a wardrobe. Because the wardrobe is, everlasting. It develops, but it's something that is always there and, you build on it. So that was my idea. And it's also composed of many different elements. It's not only, I do couture dresses or I do jeans or I do, French coats, or I do sportswear, or I do lingerie. I mean, I've done it all. So I wanted to do a little bit of everything, and every single piece stands on its own, which is, for me, really great, especially when you have to do a presentation during Couture in Paris, and you have to put together a show. But I don't really know until a week before the show what's going to happen, because all these pieces come together, and then I put them together as a show, and then we show it. But it's very sort of risky, because if you have a theme, you know what you're building at, and you already know what you're going to be showing. Because you have, say, you have the theme, Moroccan, whatever, already, there's going to be jalabas, there's going to be headscarves, there's going to be, like this whole thing. And for me to take away the idea of the theme, that sort of puts you in a position where it's a little more tricky and risky. But I loved it, because you're always on the tip of your toes. Like, you always have to pay attention. You can never lose concentration, because, you don't know where it's going. It gives you sort of a good kind of tension, which I love. It's very rewarding to work this way. Yeah.
Is that what you mean when you say developing or designing clothes with a soul? That you could really put everything in there. I think it's a beautiful expression, developing clothes with a soul. I'm trying to kind of capture the meaning of it.
Yeah, it's the way you conceive them. So the way I do it, I work with people that are also very passionate about what they do, and they're great skills. And I work with great young people, have great interns as well. And we just develop ideas, and then one thing leads to another, and then you can get really excited because something unexpected comes out, and then it's made by hand, and you see the struggle to get it right. And sometimes there's also an imperfection, and I think imperfection keeps things alive as well. I think that's a very important thing. And in working with existing materials like I do, sometimes there's clothes with imperfections and you need to work with them. So you either hide them or do something with it. And that's when you get unexpected things and things become beautiful.
Yeah. That's very well put. It's in the unexpected parts in the creation process. And I'm sure you will have more of that when you're using existing material than if you were to start with brand new material, because you need to reinvent it, which is.
And you also need to work with what you have, because the limitations, I think they force you to be creative. It's not like I say, okay, I want to do something with pink and green and then this and that. No, I just see like, what do I have? And then I start to work with that. So it's a very different way of working. And I think it's very rewarding.
I can imagine it is. As your second challenge, Ronald, you say that you've been kind of also challenged by the powers of fashion, the conglomerate, and the individual. And I think we've already spoken about it a little bit, but is there anything more there? So, because this was one of the questions, it's like, which designer has inspired you the most in your career? Is there one name that you say, well, above and beyond, this one is the one that, that you desire to be or that you aspire to be?
I think for me, my biggest hero has been Saint Laurent, because he's invented so many things and he really changed the way women thought and women wore clothes, and he was very creative and very innovative in his, especially in his earlier years. So, but I think the problem is right now is all the really big fashion conglomerates, they have so much power over the media, over us, without us even sometimes realizing it, over, the stores, the magazines, the press. If you realize that 35% of the stock market in France is owned by the two biggest fashion groups. If you realize that, then you think like, wow, there is an enormous power there. So I'm really hoping that they will start using their power to do things differently. Mm-hmm. And I think that is what is needed. The problem is that it's very difficult not to get caught up in that whole big machine, because say you've just graduated and you're a talented designer and you think like, oh, I want to start my business, and then you think like, oh, okay, there's all these awards that you can win, but then you go for this award and then the award is like, oh, you get the training how to do this, how to do that from one of the big conglomerates. Then I think, okay, before you know, they're caught up in the system. And I think what they need to do is, the next generation, I think they should be so free and actually stay away from the big fashion system the way it is. I think they should develop their own plan on their own before they go out there and really, because we need newness. We need this whole system to change. I try, but I'm old school, this is where I come from. And this is why I love doing workshops and I teach at various colleges around the world, just to get my message across, and also to hopefully trigger something in them. And because I want people to stand up and be, there needs to be a revolution,
Yeah.
And they need to come from the young designers and from the new creatives. And right now also, I think fashion and art and design is all mixed up. It's no longer just a fashion design. It's much more than that. So I think it's like how you can, make people think differently and try to do things positively. With all the awareness now about the climate, about diversity, all the ethics that are going on right now, people start to think differently, but there also needs to be a different system. And it's so difficult when there is such a big, huge, colossal system in place that doesn't want to change and that is holding on to their values and their greed and their money-making businesses. It's very, very difficult to go against it. I experienced that firsthand. Even like when we dress the stars, like we're very lucky that we actually do get to dress the stars. We don't have an atelier just making clothes for celebrities. They just happen to like our clothes because they're different than from the big brands, and that's why they wear them. But we don't have the power and the stylists. We cannot pamper them with gifts and beautiful trips and big fashion shows. We have to do it with what we are and with the clothes. And hopefully that they go for it. So this is always a challenge that you have as a very small independent brand. Next to all the big, I feel like sometimes like a little dog, like barking at like a huge mammoth that's, sort of ready to step its feet on your,
Yeah, on your little endeavor. But I think you're doing a lot more than that. It's not just barking because, time and again, these big names are choosing your brand and also are very publicly speaking about it and, expressing how proud they are of wearing one of your creations. And even as a small independent brand, you manage to basically to make that difference. So it's never ending because every time I look at your Instagram, there's a new one or a new celebrity or someone who's doing something with it. So you're definitely on to something.
The moment we did our show during the pandemic, everybody was quiet. There was no big fashion shows. All the big brands didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to react, to respond. And that was a moment for us. We could do it because we were there. We were the only one doing something. I think right now you see it's very, very difficult for a small brand like us to sort of even get attention in this world the way it is now, because everybody's like been locked up and all the brands, they have had so many things they want to show and bring and make money and so everything is so over the top. Like when you look at the last shows in Paris, they were so over the top and there was so much, there was more and more and more. There was more parties than ever trying to get everybody's attention. So it's not a time to be quiet. And I'm more about the quiet voice, and hopefully, you'll get through. But it's a very difficult, it's a real challenge. And I think what I said before, I think for me, it's not so much about me. It's also about all these young people, these really talented people. I want them to get a place, but I want them to do their own thing. I don't want them to be, taken away by these big brands again.
Definitely.
We are very happy and excited to be partnering with Mindstone for the recording of this episode. Mindstone is a platform that lets you build courses curated from the best articles, podcasts, and videos available online, helping your students learn faster and remember more. You can think of Mindstone and learning in the same way you think of Spotify and listening. With Mindstone, you can use the internet as an infinite library of content that you can curate into playlists with tailored recommendations, and it's shareable with your students. Where Spotify enhances the listening experience, Mindstone exists to enhance the learning experience. Check out mindstone.com and find out how you can get started.
One of the things that I've also seen, you did a talk for students in the Netherlands, a college tour, which also focused on the environment. And you spoke a lot about collaboration and that you would be very keen to collaborate with more brands and people to basically get this sustainability vision further off the ground, which I thought was so interesting. That is basically not about trying to put your own brand and name continuously out there, but basically looking at the bigger message for haute couture, for fashion, and kind of see how you bring those things together. I think undoubtedly with authentic voices, but also I can imagine with big brand names if possible. Am I correct?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, I'm not interested to become a big brand myself, to be honest. It might be weird to say I just want to do my thing and be able to spread my message and show my creativity and try to, to get people to think differently. But I think I'm very interested in working with other brands. For example, we're now working with a company, or with a few companies actually. One company collects all the textile trash in Amsterdam, which is one of the biggest cities problems right now because people throw away so many clothes and even unworn. And then I work with a company that makes felt out of the trash, because usually the quality of the clothes is not so good, especially with fast fashion. So, to do something with it's very difficult. So they make felt, but we're now in a process to try and find ways, to make that a fashionable product, to make it an exciting product. So we already did that during our last 2 couture presentations. I made a corset out of felt that is usually used, for soundproof walls and stuff. But I made a molded corset in felt, and Gwen Stefani wore it, and so all of a sudden it was a cool thing. But I would do it with an outside company, and they produce it, and everything is done by them. I want to help them to gain a different audience, and also for people to think differently again. I mean, I'm also in talks with a big car company that's interested. Maybe we need to do something with the interiors or with the leftovers that they have from their car interiors, to do something with it. And so I have constant conversations with a lot of companies. Of course, people are interested in the story. It's kind of difficult usually to make it into a real project. This is the challenge that I have, but we're getting there, and we're talking to many different parties to make change, because I want to scale, but I don't want to do it myself. Yeah. I don't want to be the one scaling myself, but I want to scale with other people, but with a responsible circular product.
Yeah. Well, more power to you. And I do understand your challenge of there's the idea of doing it, and then there's the execution, right? But it's good that you're all sniffing around and kind of, start a conversation, and that then beautiful things come out of it. Again, more power to you, that people see, wow, here's what you can do. And I think that's a very unique way of demonstrating what you're all about. And what I also like about your thinking is that, it's not about the next thing and kind of our own egos, and it's about the bigger picture here, right? Yeah. It's about true sustainability, really thinking about where we're going to be beyond our lifetime. And also, as you say on your website, genuinely appreciating what beauty is. Not just pushing out the next thing because it is the next thing, because that's very often what you see. It's like, oh, here's the next thing. Is it better? No. Is it more beautiful? No, but it's the next thing. And that's what we're information addicts. That's what we're after.
Yeah. You see all these huge show productions right now, and they're getting crazier and crazier and more, and like in different places. And, and every time I feel it's to hide the lack of creativity in the clothes, or the lack of love for the clothes. I understand, because if you make 6 or 10 collections a year, they cannot all be brilliant. So,
I'm going to your last challenge, Ronald, and you've mentioned here a couple of things. You say internet, social media, marketing versus realness, craftsmanships, quality and substance. And I think we've already touched a couple of these topics, but I would like to dive in with this challenge, specifically the effect of social media. I mean, you're going great on social media. Your Instagram is beautiful. I see, these people endorsing and whatever. We don't have a visual, but I see Ronald frowning as I say this. I think it's a beautiful Instagram feed.
Yeah, but I'm not a good example of how to do Instagram, because I think, no. The problem, what I saw with the internet, with social media, is that, that everything needed to be fast. And, the superficialness of it all is like, girls using Instagram filters. And then the idea came, of course, this is where all the new beauty companies, not the old school ones, but the new beauty companies are all of a sudden bigger than the old ones, because they got the idea, okay, well, those filters, we need to do them in real life. So all the girls needed to get all the shading and the makeup and the this and the that to look like their Instagram picture. And, I come from, my first job was at Bill Blass, and at Bill Blass, there was all these women, and they had real personality. There were all these couture clients, and you had Jessie Norman, the opera singer. You had Nan Kemp. You had even Nancy Reagan, Liza Minnelli. All these characters, and they weren't necessarily beautiful, but they all had a real developed personality and a style. And for me, that always stayed with me. So when I saw this whole thing happen with all the filters and the Kim Kardashians of this world, where everything is so uptight and almost, fake. It's very hard to be that in real life. It's exhausting. You cannot be yourself. And I think why do you wipe away your personality? I think you should, wipe away the filters and show your personality and enlarge that part. And I think you started to see that happening now with the whole diversity conversation that's thankfully happened. I mean, I always say, like, when I looked at the Saint Laurent shows, for example, he always had all nationalities, all races in his shows. And that was the beauty of it. It was never like, an army of clones, which you saw like 10 years ago with a lot of the big brands that were extremely powerful. And, they had all these 16-year-old girls walk out and they all looked the same, they had no personality. And I thought, it made me sad. It's like, and I don't understand how women right now in this world would try to be like someone else. I mean, show yourself the time to do it. So I think realness is very important. And it's the same for the clothes. This is what I say. Like, it's not, a lot of clothes are now made for the effects. Like, it's a lot of fabric, a lot of volume, and then you take a picture far away, and then everybody's like, wow, did you see that show? And then I think, but who's going to wear that dress in real life? Or who's going to, like, I always want to see it on real women. I think that's when things come alive. And so for me, realness is very important. And I think couture is really about realness because everything's done by hand. Because I've seen it that I went to, a big party with people wearing really couture, and like that I saw the dresses close up and I was like, oh God, this is that dress that I thought was so great. But in real life, you realize it's not so great. It's not what you think you see. This is what is for me a little bit wrong with the world. I think a lot of people are seeing that now. So thank God things are changing. But I think realness is very important in terms of everything, Yeah.
No, I mean, it reminds me of a comment that was made before. I think, I don't remember who said it, but the basic observation was social media is not a place. It's fiction, right? This is all a mosaic of impressions or snippets or moments or illusions that we're trying to project in a place that isn't there, right? And some people, they confuse one thing with the other because, and that is because it's gamified, because of the number of followers, because of so many things, the influence you can exercise. But people need to remember that it is not real. And I think that's something that if you have 1 million followers on social media, you might be very, very unhappy as a person, right? Those two things go together. 1 million followers on Instagram does not equal eternal happiness or health or wealth or whatever, because it's not a place. There's nothing happening there. It's an illusion. And the social media platforms are continuously selling this illusion, and we are kind of, tricked into it, thinking, because we're endorsed and it's endorphin, we get likes, we get shares, we get whatever. We choose to display the very, very best of ourselves, and even kind of the illusion of the best of ourselves. It's not even the best of ourselves. It's,
and then we take it also further into like dating apps, or even like in family pictures, or like people start to like. And I think, come on, guys, you have to somewhat be yourself. No, who are you trying to sell? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ronald, for taking us through these challenges. I was curious about, because I'm still going to go there. I'm still a child, still a social media addict in a way, and I do apologize. But of all the celebrity endorsements and support you've gotten, is there one kind of person, actor, actress, singer that basically stood out that you really say, well, they really personify the brand?
I don't know if she personified the brand, but I think one person really stood out for me is Celine Dion, because I think, her journey as an artist, but it's also, I've met her on several occasions, how she is as a person, the passion she has for her art, but also the passion she has for other people's art, and the respect she has for, that she has for me, for example, as a designer, and the support she gives, and also the fact that she actually buys the clothes, which is very, very rare with the stars. I think she's very true to herself. She is who she is. For me, she made the most impact. Yeah.
And then our two very last questions, Ronald, questions that I ask all my guests. One is about reading. So you've been talking about teaching people, trying to inspire, many other young fashion designers. If they were to ask you which book they should read that could potentially help them on their journey, is there any book you could help them with?
Oh God. I have to make a big admission here that I hardly read. The only thing I read is like newspapers, articles, but books. I very rarely read books. I simply don't have the concentration, because there's no excuse to say like I don't have the time to do it. It's like I find it really hard to concentrate every time I start a book. Like I never finish it. I can only tell you the one book that made a big impression on me, but that has nothing to do, I think, or not much to do with what we talked about today, is The Perfume from Patrick Süskind, which was, I thought, it really got to me, that book. I mean, I thought it was beautifully written and very interesting subject. So, yeah, I would recommend everybody to read that. But this question is definitely not something for me.
Don't worry. I think it is. And we've had more guests saying that they're not really readers, but they then, for instance, refer to a website or a magazine that they like. So something that they basically say, hey, have a look at this if you want to get inspired. Well, Patrick Süskind does Parfum. I think that's a very good recommendation. And we previously did an interview with a perfume maker, and then we also discussed that book in detail, specifically all the feelings you can associate with scent and stuff like that, which very much came across in that book. Yeah. And then the very last question, Ronald. Now let's turn the tables. This is the RVDK podcast. You are the host, so you're holding the microphone. Who would you like to interview? Who would be your guest on the podcast?
I think Monsieur Arnaud, Bernard Arnault.
Oh wow, yeah, okay.
I think I would love to hear how he thinks, and I would love to find out what moves him and why he does things the way he does. Yeah.
And for the listener, this Monsieur Arnault, he is the owner of the biggest fashion.
corporate. The biggest fashion conglomerate. Yeah.
And so he owns. Could you tell us very quickly which brands, for the listeners?
Moet Chandon, NSC, and then there's Dior. Givenchy. Well, there's many. I can't name them all now, but there's many very, very influential fashion brands that are part of the group. And it's an enormous achievement to have done what he does. Yeah. But I also, like I said before, I think he also has an enormous power to change. And that would be a real interesting thing to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. I'd be very much open to listening. I will be your first listener if that interview ever comes together. And I'll keep you posted if we get Monsieur Arnault on our podcast, because we need to think big. As well. I'm going to add one more question, Ronald, because I think it's so important. You, of course, have for many people, a dream job. I think there are many aspiring fashion designers who would like to achieve what you have achieved. Is there any advice that you could give them? So for a young Ronald van der Kemp 25 years ago, is there anything you would like to advise them or to pass along to them?
I'll tell you, before I started my company 7 years ago, I said I got myself a coach because I wanted to go back to like you said, the 25-year-old Ronald van der Kemp who just graduated from art school and with a lot of passion and wanting to do things and wanted to be true to myself. And I think, I've said this before, but I think that is the main thing. It's very important that you really believe it from the inside. Whatever you do, you need to really believe it from the inside. Otherwise, it's never going to work. So the fact that I got that coach was to get myself to realize what do I really want. And that came out very clear. And then I was off and I was doing my thing. And, well, that's how I started my brand. So it's really because this is what I really believed in. This is really what I wanted to do, and this is where my heart is, and that's why I keep going, because otherwise I would have stopped already 100 times. because it's very challenging.
Yeah.
It is a huge challenge every day, but I still love what I do, and it's this is why you can do it.
So believe, really honestly feel it and really believe it. And would you also advise to get a coach?
Well, it's good if you have somebody around you that knows you very well, that can push you a little bit, but yeah. I think it's the most important thing is that you really truly know, and I think this comes in everything. It's about realness, about who you are, what you're about your wardrobe, about how you come across, about it's all about this little world, but it can mean a lot and it can do a lot. If you really understand what you're about and you can bring that to the outside world, I think that's when you're an accomplished human being. No?
Ronald, thank you so very much for taking the time to talk to us. I've surely learned a lot about sustainability, but also about authenticity, about creativity and how to believe in yourself. And it's my sincere wish that our listeners will be inspired as well. I wish you nothing but the very, very best in the growth of RVDK. And undoubtedly, I will hear a lot more and see a lot more about this brand. It's been a very big honor to have you on this podcast. Ronald van der Kemp.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure to be here. And I hope everybody has been inspired a little bit. I hope I can be a little bit of help to change this world for the better. And thank you very much for getting this opportunity.
If you liked this episode of the Teach Pitch podcast, then it would mean the absolute world if you could share it with your friends and or give it a short review on your preferred podcast platform. The more you share your ideas about these interviews, the more people will find out about them. So do let us know what you think. We'd be very, very grateful.
Special thanks to Kevin MacLeod for our beautiful theme music, Le Grand Chase. This podcast was produced and edited by Natalie Piles. Project coordination by Inva Cheney.